see, Senator Mark Johnson, Senate Bill 370. If you'll identify yourself, you'll be recognized.
Mark Johnson, Senate District 17. Thank you, Madam Chair. We are going to run the amendment. I may speak first and then offer the amendment. Would you pass it out? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I had not signed this amendment yet. Let me do. I need to sign 5. I misplaced the chairman. Great. That's a pleasure. Thank you, sir. Madam Chair, I apologize. The staff had asked me to sign the amendment before we do that, and it will be passed out. I'm here to present Senate Bill 370.
You want to do the amendment first?
Somewhat complicated, but I'm going to try to keep it.
Wait just a minute. Let people see the amendment.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I don't know. Are we meeting again? Yes. Probably Monday. Is this pretty much the bill, the amendment?
I'm sorry, Madam
The
Chair.
amendment, the bill, or
This is an amendment to the bill.
the bill? Okay. So would you explain the amendment?
Yes, ma'am. And let me also introduce Professor Rick Peltz-Steele, who's a former UA Little Rock law professor and is now out of state, a different school. I'll let him introduce himself momentarily. But before I actually explain the amendment, I better explain the purpose of the amendment and where it fits into this. The bill prior to the amendment, one of the changes it would do in consolidating the administrative expenses of both the Fayetteville and Little Rock Law School is that it would revert to where we were many years ago when the Little Rock School was a branch of Fayetteville and we had one dean. That was in the Senate Bill 370. The amendment will remove that provision. There will still be 2 deans, one for Bowen School and one for Leffler School in Fayetteville. So that's basically what the amendment does, but it continues to look for cost savings through consolidation of the school, and it doesn't change the number of students or the number of professors. It simply addresses the administrative costs, and that I would appreciate a good vote on the amendment, and then we'll move on.
Do I hear a motion on the amendment? Senator Chesterfield, you're recognized.
And I've said it to Senator, thank you, Madam Chair. Senator, my concern with adopting the amendment is that we have got to go back and forth between the bill and the amendment to try to make sense of it all. And I have asked in the past that we would at least have it engrossed in the bill so that it reads and it flows more smoothly for me to understand. I can't speak for anybody else, for me to understand. Because now I'm running between lines 28 and 31 and 36, 28 and 36. I got to find out where this fits. Would you be so kind as to get this engrossed so that we could see what the bill really is saying?
Let me respond to you this way. First of all, I understand, agree, and you asked me about a bill I had in retirement the other day, which I gladly did that.
Yes, you
because
did.
it was complex and you needed to see it in context. If you would hold your request in abeyance for just a little while, you might feel that it's not necessary to do that. But certainly I understand everything you say, and I want to accommodate that because I also share your frustration often when I'm trying to put an amendment in context. So if you would just let us go ahead and adopt it now, and then we will we'll discuss it at a little bit later in my presentation. I've asked for a favorable vote on the amendment, Madam Chair.
Do I hear a motion? Second. All in favor? All opposed? I guess it's passed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I want to welcome Professor Peltz-Steele, and he was a catalyst for this bill in the first place, and I want to thank my co-sponsors, Senator Caldwell, Senator Clark, Senator Gilmore, Senator Hill, Senator McKee, Senator Payton, and Representatives Beck, Beatty, Bentley, Long, and Pilkington for working with me on this. Again, this came about because of a study done, I believe, about 12 years ago. Am I correct, Professor? By Professor Peltz-Steele when he was at the Bowen School of Law at UALR. It basically said instead of having two relatively mediocre law schools, we should have one great law school. And he outlined in his paper the whys and wherefores of that, and I'm going to let him touch on that in just a moment. But at the time, and I will allow him to correct me if I have some of my historical facts wrong, because obviously it was 12 years ago, but it was my understanding that he had originally presented this as a law review article, and the dean at the time, Dean DePippa, declined to allow that to be published by the ULR Bowen School Law Review. Subsequently, the Advanced Arkansas Institute, which some of y'all are familiar with, it was founded by former State Representative Dan Greenberg, published this paper that he had written, which of course, it being in a private organization, they could do so. It obviously was critical of the status quo, but it pointed out academic and educational reasons why it would be best to consolidate the two schools. And it also had an effect of generating some pushback on it anytime you do make any changes. But more specifically, and I'm going to use the 2011 numbers that he was dealing with at the time, in his estimation, it would save the state about $1.2 million a year. Now, we can figure in inflation and 12 years of new costs. I'm going to say it would be between $1.5 and $2 million a year in savings, which would not affect a single student nor faculty member that teaches, but would also allow the that savings to go to scholarships or for some other thing that actually helps students become better lawyers. And now that number that I just threw out there is an estimate, and it does not include the effect of the amendment, because when you have administrators making around $250,000 a year and you keep two of them, then you're, yes, that's going to affect the savings somewhat, but this is what we have to do. And the question was raised, and Professor Peltz-Steele will address that too, that if you took away the dean at Bowen, then there is at least a question of whether or not the school's accreditation would be maintained. And so rather than risk that, I weighed that against the cost savings, and we just determined it's simpler just to take that out of the bill and not risk anything that could affect the accreditation. So basically that's what the bill does. In the bill that is not, before it's amended on page 2, lines 3 through 12, you'll see some of the offices that can be consolidated, and the amendment contracts that somewhat. But the idea is, of course, we're going to save money. We're going to have a more efficient operation. There could even perhaps be some professors that could teach at both schools. Certainly since 2011, we've had technologies like Zoom and things like that would allow some of these things to happen and cut out some of the redundant costs that is ultimately a cost to the system, the UA system, and to both campuses of Fayetteville and Little Rock. So if I could, Madam Chair, I would like to turn the mic over to Professor Peltz-Steele and let him introduce himself and to give his testimony, and then I would reserve the right to close.
You'll identify yourself. You'll be recognized. You turn on your.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Madam Chair and Senators. I'm Rick Peltz-Steele. It's a tremendous privilege to be back in my once home state to be with you today. I've been a law professor for 25 years, about half that career here in Little Rock. I'm now a Chancellor Professor at the University of Massachusetts Law School. I'm licensed to practice in Washington, D.C. I live in Rhode Island now with my wife, who also is in legal academics. She is a UALR alumna and still a proud licensed Arkansas attorney. She says hello. Senators, I'd ask you to imagine something with me. Two law schools, each with distinctive strengths, have come together to create extraordinary opportunities for learning and experiences for growth. From their two locations, one a commercial and research hub, the other a political capital, the schools offer world-class faculty, a curriculum of exceptional breadth and depth in theory, practice, and interdisciplinary studies, a geographic presence that spans legal markets, a vast alumni network, and a strong tradition of diversity and social impact. I wish that that text I just read to you was about Arkansas. Those are words I took from a description of Rutgers University. Rutgers is one fully accredited, ABA-accredited law school with two campuses, one near New York and one in Camden, which is near Philadelphia and Trenton. Rutgers is a four-campus land-grant university, and in 2015, it merged its two law school campuses, despite their locations at opposite ends of the state. SB370, to be clear, does not do that. It does not merge the two law schools in Arkansas. It's a far more modest proposal. Senator Johnson asked me principally to answer one simple question, which is, does SB370 risk the accreditation of the two Arkansas law schools? My answer is equally simple. It does not. I do not even think that it triggers an ABA review, though asking for consultation is always wise. The senator asked me here because I left Arkansas to become immersed in ABA accreditation. I joined UMass in its second year of operation as the first and still only public law school in the Commonwealth. UMass hired me laterally from UALR to have someone with experience at a fully accredited ABA law school and to take a leadership role in the ABA approval process there. I can tell you, for a new law school, the ABA process is grueling and lengthy. I started at UALR in 2011. We got provisional accreditation in 2012, and we were fully accredited in 2016. In those years, I lead authored two strategic plans for the law school. As chair of the faculty and part of the senior administrative team, I coordinated the ABA self-study and site inspection that were pivotal in our application. And we are blissfully now in our 10-year cycle of accreditation, and I have happily returned to the classroom. Senator Johnson knows, and as he indicated, part of the reason he invited me was because of the 2011 white paper that he referred to, which indicated a potential cost savings by combining administrative functions, not affecting student-facing or public-facing services of the law schools. To be sure, I think that the AAI, when it distributed that paper to legislators in 2011, hoped that saving money would get your attention. That's not why I wrote the paper, though. Much as the senator indicated, I wrote it because if you made me czar of the unified law school, if such a thing existed, I wouldn't give you the money back. I would invest it in making Arkansas a top-class law school in the country, putting that savings in students, faculty, and programs rather than in bureaucracy. The potential, in my view, was even bigger still. When I taught here, I was very frustrated that the two law schools seemed locked into what I described then as a pseudo-competition in which each jealously guards its own resources. And I understand that. It's natural. To be sure, U of A is a top-flight research institution. It has fabulous programs such as ag law, interdisciplinary opportunities. Little Rock is a terrific institution. It has access to the state capitol. A lot of my alumni are here in this building today. Both those law schools have sharpened their curriculum to facilitate those strengths. But the strangeness of it, Senators, is that when I taught here, my students were not able to take advantage of the opportunities available at the other public law school. You have to be Team Fayetteville or Team Little Rock. And there was no contact in between. In my 13 years here, I think I went up to U of A twice, and that was on my own initiative. And the only time I saw the law schools collaborate was when they came here to the legislature biannually to ask for money. I would like to see students in Arkansas have the best of both worlds, have the most that the public dollar can offer. I am, to be fair, an economic conservative, and I support healthy competition, but this is not that. Those schools have very similar missions, and in the back offices, I fear that Arkansans are paying for services twice. Of 25 states with less than median population in the country, Arkansas is one of only 3 with 2 public law schools. Kentucky has 5 million people to Arkansas's 3. The other is Kansas, which has Washburn, a peculiar municipal university history there. In the 8th Circuit, only Arkansas and Missouri have 2 public law schools. Missouri has double the population and 2 private schools as well. Now, to reiterate, SB370 does not merge the 2 law schools. The bill modestly calls for sharing of overlapping administrative functions. I hope that that will cause the law schools to work together. ABA standards, in summary, require adequacy in support of the program of legal education. Student-facing services in the program of legal education would not be affected here. Because SB 370 would keep both schools and the 2 deans, as the senator has indicated, that's required by ABA standards. There'd be 2 chief administrators. There should not be a problem. I would say that even Rutgers has 2 deans, and they split the administrative stipend on top of the faculty salary. So as you know, that technology has made this, I think, even more possible since it was in 2011, Senators. And no wonder then that Penn State also is looking to merge its 2 campuses, its 2 law schools, similarly, one at Flagship University Park and one at Carlisle near the state capitol. Those 2 law schools were separated in 2015, and that state seeks to achieve efficiency, resources, and competitiveness. SB 370 is not as bold, but I think a step in the right direction. And I thank Senator Johnson for the invitation to speak to that point today, and for you for having me today.
Thank you very much. Are there some questions from the committee? Is there anybody in the audience to speak for or against the bill? Joni Lee. If you'd identify yourself, you'll be recognized.
You're on. Oh, okay. I'm Joni Lee from the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. I'm the Vice Chancellor for University Affairs and handle most of the issues for the university at the Capitol. And I just want to respond to a few things that we heard in relation to the bill. I think this is a classic case of if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think that I would refute, first of all, that Arkansas has 2 mediocre law schools. I think even Mr. Peltz, you heard him say that we actually have 2 very excellent law schools. And I would argue that they serve different needs in the state, and they serve the legal community very differently. From the Capitol standpoint, in Bowen, we have a number of our students that graduate and go into prosecutorial roles, and others that work with the legal system here, very practitioner type of roles. And so we appreciate and we sort of honor those differences. I don't believe that the competition that Mr. Peltz spoke to is felt as much as he might want to allude to. And in fact, I think the 2 law schools respect the distinct mission of both schools. And I think that asking for there to be an administrative compilation of the schools sort of starts to deter those distinct missions. There is not a glut of lawyers in Arkansas. Arkansas is fifth from the bottom in the number of lawyers per capita. And there are parts of the state that don't have any lawyers that are serving those counties. And so the idea that we somehow there's no demand for the services of the law schools is not, in fact, the case. Also, I think that the accreditation issues are real, and I think that the cost savings would be very limited, especially with the amendment that Senator Johnson is adding today. Most of the administrative functions that are listed in Senate Bill 370 would, in fact, we believe by accreditation standards need to remain at the Bowen School as well as the school Leffler in Fayetteville, and not having those services in both buildings to fully serve the students at each location, we believe would be an affront to accreditation standards. When a law school is even thought about being merged or split out, I think that it's safe to say that accreditation would have to begin very early, and the process of that does not start with a Senate bill at the Capitol. It starts with an examination of what it would take to merge those schools or separate those schools. And that's a long process that the ABA accreditation unit has to work through with a locality. So I think that the savings, in fact, would be minimal. We would refute that there's even $1.2 million that was mentioned in a 2011 article. We believe it would be very limited in terms of savings. And also, to add 400 students to what the school at Fayetteville would then need to serve in addition to the students that they already have, you can't imagine that they could do that with the staff that they have. There would have to be additional staff on their end. So for those reasons, we wanted to present our opposition to the bill, and I'm glad to take any questions if any members have them.
Are there any questions from the committee? Thank you very much. Let's see, Melissa Russ? So identify yourself, you'll be recognized. You're on. Oh, you were on. No, you were on. They're temperamental. There you go.
My apologies, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Melissa Rust. I'm Vice President for University Relations at the University of Arkansas System. Please forgive my voice. It's returning from a few days, having left me. I certainly am not going to cover the ground that my colleague did, because she did so, I thought, very ably. But I would like to share with you that Dr. Bobbitt was unable to be here today, had to be out of town at an event. But he did want me to express strong opposition from the University of Arkansas System with respect to this bill. And I also have been asked to likewise express strong opposition from the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville for this bill as well. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I did want to share with you that on behalf of the President and the Board of Trustees, there's no entity within the University of Arkansas System that is supportive of Senate Bill 370. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Okay. Are you closed for your bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank Ms. Lee and Ms. Russ for coming up and sharing that with us. As I mentioned earlier, in deference to the request by Senator Chesterfield, I would be happy to pull the bill down, allow it to be engrossed, and if I wouldn't request you, Madam Chair, to make sure that it could maintain its position on the agenda until we can get it engrossed and the committee can meet again. So with that, I appreciate you letting these witnesses, especially Professor Peltz-Steele, who traveled a long way, to be able to hear his testimony today. And I will reserve my opportunity to close once it's engrossed and we bring it back for the committee's consideration.
You want to expunge the vote?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
On the adoption, the amendment?
No, the amendment, I want to keep the amendment because it's going to be engrossed and then bring back, give Senator Chesterfield and others a chance to review the bill as engrossed. Well,
It'll need to be expunged in order to get.
It'll be
it may
expunged.
not be the very next meeting is what I was saying, Senator Letting. But we will get it engrossed so the committee can look at the engrossed bill in context. And
Right.
Because the amendment will stay in the committee.
Yes.
Make a motion to expunge the vote by which the, is adopted, so it can be sent to engrossing and come back to the bill.
Okay.
And-
Do I hear a second? All in favor? All opposed? Thank you very much.
And if it's okay, Madam Chair, what I will do is put that on members on for tomorrow, and that way we'll have it engrossed. It'll be sent back to committee for a subsequent meeting, if
Thank
that's
you very
okay.
much.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee.
Okay.